Today we are talking with Lauren from the Simple Life Project podcast, which you should definitely check out. And we are talking about all things minimalism and simplifying your life. And she coaches on the subject. So obviously she's the best person that we could bring in to speak to that. Minimalism has been such an important part of my journey to this place, mostly my ability to transition to the place that I'm in right now. But as I continue my journey with minimalism, I continue to be inspired and impacted by people living simply. And Lauren is a great example of that. And she's a great teacher of that. So listen in and go ahead and go check her out after the show. Welcome to season 3. I would love to tell you that season 3 is full of so many twists and turns and craziness that's going to come in. And honestly, it could be. But this podcast is my own personal journal of escaping from what I deemed a life that wasn't really fit for me. And that started in season 1, rooted in the fact that my dream had died and I didn't know what my goals were in life anymore. And as we've walked through the valley of what that looks like and everything encompassing, we've been recording. And so I'm excited to be going into season 3. I don't know what's in store for us, but I can tell you that from season 1 to now, every day feels a little bit better and a lot more aligned. So I'm excited that you're here. If you're just finding this today in season 3, you can go back and find all the past episodes. I started at around the age of 30 recording this podcast every weekday, working through this really painful point in my life. And we're just starting into season 3, and I'm excited to see where we get. It's a whole lot of entrepreneur, creative vibes that are going out into this world. And the more that I get to experience that, the better that I feel. So gear up, load up, and let's all go out and change the world however that looks for us. But more than anything, let's forgive ourselves for our dream dying and start getting back to rebuilding after that. Hey, welcome to the bonus episode. I'm so excited to have my guest Lauren here today. She's going to help us with all things downsizing and simplifying and just making life easier. And I think that's so important for so many of us as we start to walk through, and for moms out there who are gearing up to get back to school. You know, we have about a month window before we go back and kick off into that. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about how important simplifying your life is and eliminating some of the clutter with my expert today, Lauren. So Lauren, thank you so much for being here. If you want to go ahead and just talk a little bit about what you do, that would be awesome.
Thanks for having me on the show, Hannah. I'm excited to talk about decluttering and simplifying. I am a mom of 3, and I recently, probably in the last 5 years, I have really gotten passionate about living more minimally and simplifying and organizing, and I just felt a calling to help others who might struggle with that. And so I have a podcast called the Simple Life Project podcast, where I talk about a lot of this stuff, as well as a website. I do a lot of posts on decluttering, simplifying, and food from scratch, that type of thing. And then I also have a declutter course. So that in a nutshell is what I tour, like help you out, hopefully inspire you to simplify and live a little more minimally in this world that we live in that is always telling us to consume more and to spend more, even if you don't need it. And so like combating that is really a big part of the puzzle.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to start here because you had said people struggle with that. What do you think the biggest struggle with starting down this path is for people?
I think I'm going to specifically speak to the mom because the time constraints are so different, right? When you, well, maybe they're not, but for me, I just feel like pre-kids, I had a little bit more free time after work and different things like that, where I could choose whether I wanted to declutter or simplify or go out to dinner, whatever. But with being a mom, it's like I think the hardest part is not just not having time. You're just like, I don't have time. I am doing everything and more. And so the thought of decluttering could probably really overwhelm some moms, especially if they're working moms. And so I would just say probably just the thought of like starting a huge project could really most likely overwhelm.
Yeah. So you help people get started, because that's probably what you found with a lot of people. The getting started down this road is the biggest hurdle. After you get people started, do you feel like everything's easier after you get over that initial step?
Yeah, so the getting started part is the hardest part. I think the first part before the even getting started part is to truly inspire somebody to
Mm.
want to live a lifestyle, because decluttering is more, and living more minimally is so much more than just decluttering. It actually is a lifestyle. Like you have to keep your consuming habits in mind and really be intentional with what you're bringing into your home and what you're spending money on and what you're allowing into your home. And so I think the first part is just to really understand your why and understand why are you wanting this, why are you wanting to live more minimally, why are you wanting to declutter your space, why are you wanting to do a lifestyle change, and really understand that first before you even get rid of anything. Because I know from experience, if you don't have like a strong why, then you can declutter today and then next week it's going to be back. And so it's just like this vicious cycle of constantly decluttering, and then it just gets kind of overwhelming again, and then you lose your motivation. But if you truly understand, like for me, for example, like it truly made a difference in my motherhood stress levels. I have 3 kids under 3 currently, and I cannot imagine living in clutter. I think I would probably lose my mind. And so I think that has really been a strong why for me, is understanding my family benefits from it, my parenting and just the way I parent benefits from it, my relationship with my husband benefits from it, and our bank account benefits from it when we're not just spending money on everything and more. So it's a very loaded question. I guess I hope I answered part of that.
No, I think you absolutely did. And I think you backed us up where we needed to start. And you are absolutely right on. You have to have a reason. Otherwise, you're just taking action with like, right, I can't just apply this minimalist lifestyle band-aid to fix deeper causes of what's going on. Like you can't just declutter your kitchen and be like, they're fixed, decluttered, living minimally. I think you're absolutely right. It's so much deeper than that. You have to look at the entirety of your life and why you're making this decision. You can't just read it in a book and say, oh, okay, that's going to make my life better, I'll go do that. It really is an entire lifestyle shift.
Yes. Yeah. And on the same note of that, I remember when I was first getting started years ago, I would see these perfectly curated minimalist kitchens, these perfectly curated minimalist toy cabinets with the wooden toys and like 5 of them for kids. And I think it's taken me time, but like understanding that just because you're minimalizing doesn't mean you need to get rid of everything old and go buy the perfect new and simple as well, because that can get really expensive and it can just kind of be counteractive. And so just being really happy with what you have and knowing like it might not fit that perfect Pinterest picture of, like, let's say for the kids' toys, the wooden toys, you might have plastic toys, but just, lessening the amount you have. I think it's all like a mindset, but maybe my first piece of advice is not to get caught up in like what it looks like and more just how functional your home is. And so that to me was a really big aha moment, not when I first got started, but probably a couple of years after that. And it was very, very hard at first to really understand that I didn't need to buy brand new, but simple, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that the focus really is in the functionality, it doesn't, the pictures are all cool. And like, I'm here for that. I love, oh my gosh, I could zone out on beautiful minimalist pictures all day long. Um, but it does come down to how functional your home is. And I think for me, it's knowing that I have things that I love and can love well, um, because I don't have so much of it that I don't even get to see what I have, and really appreciate those things. So talk to me a little bit about function and how important function is to the minimalist process.
Yeah, I think that for just, did you say function? What we,
Yes.
yeah, I would say for like kind of like going back to what I said, when you are decluttering, you don't want to get, because let me just back up. A lot of people are worried if they get rid of something, they're going to need it later. And that's a big stumbling block for some people. Like I've come across, even my own family and people in my family, I've tried to help simplify a little bit. They're like, no, definitely not. We might need this someday. And that is a big thing with getting rid of and decluttering, like that scared of, I might need this someday, I'm not going to get rid of it, that would be a waste of money type of a thing. But just knowing like you aren't going to go without, and however you want to see your space today, like strive for that. Don't worry about the future, because the future might never come. So I guess that would be my first thing. If you're worried about getting rid of something that might definitely you might need later, which in my experience, like 98% of the time you end up not needing that anyway, but nonetheless you still have to be worried about it because it's going to come into your brain. But just see your house as you want to see it, or your space or your lifestyle as you want to see it today, as you dream about living that more simple lifestyle, and just go for it. And don't let any voices kind of get in your way as far as, oh, I might need this someday type of a thing. I guess we'll get started there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that is, I noticed in my own experience, that was a huge stumbling block for me. We just minimized my husband's closet, and I will say the deep attachment that my husband has for old, crappy fishing and hunting sweatshirts is a little next level. I had no idea. Most of them were at the back of the closet. I'm not sure he's seen them for the last 10 years. But it was a mental hurdle for him. I ended up having to just eliminate for him because he could not let go of those old ratty high school hunting and fishing sweatshirts that he wears under and with everything. So, and that was just crappy sweatshirts, right? That's not even stuff that really matters. How do you help people through that mental block? Because it's big, it's real.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it goes a lot deeper than just the act of decluttering itself. And so I do want to say, like, if you are listening and if you want to get started living more simply, I don't even technically even like to call it minimalist, because I don't technically think I'm a minimalist by say, but like I definitely in my mindset am. But I have 3 kids. We have, more than one shirt a person.
Yep.
We're not, die hard minimalist, but we do live very simply, and our closets are pared down, and we don't have much clutter. I think there's two, I guess, types of, minimalists, or if you whatever you want to call it. I think it's morphed over the years, but just know, like, I am probably a lot like you. It's not one way or the other. But going back to your question, I think the first place to start is with yourself, because if you tried to start with other people, it will be really hard. Even with your kids' stuff, the best thing that helped me was just start with my stuff. And then once I declutter my stuff and simplify my area, then I can warm up with the kids' stuff, and then, have the conversation with my husband. But I've learned a lot of tough lessons not getting rid of other people's things, because it's very hurtful, it's disrespectful, and it really ruins the process of them really wanting to jump on board with you living a more simple lifestyle. I think you'll get a lot more pushback. At least I did, because I made the mistake of thinking they wouldn't notice and getting rid of something because it bothered me. And so a lot of growth has happened within myself of really taking a look at how I consume as a mom, and then look at other people. And I think just if it's hard to do, because you think, well, I'm going to declutter my stuff and then, maybe get on everybody else to do their own. But I think it starts with you decluttering your own and then helping your spouse or helping your kids declutter their stuff. And if there's a hard time with, I don't know if I should get rid of this sweatshirt, I don't know if I should get rid of this, maybe put it in a box. This is what we did. We put it in a box of like, maybe let's put it here, and then, but we won't get rid of it right now. And if you keep going into that box and you keep thinking, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use this, and keep pulling it out, then like you do use it, and this is something that you love, even if it's old or even if it's not brand new and sparkly, even if it has rips. If you love it, keep it, right? But put it in that box. And what we've found is 90% of the things that we put in that box never ever come out one time. And then it's a reality check. Like for my husband, it's like, oh, I actually really don't need that. And it's just over time. It takes a little bit of time. So that's my advice there.
Yeah, and I think that that's so helpful. Like, I made that a little more extreme just to prepare you for the mental attachments that you have to things. But you're so right in chill on other people. Like, really do start with yourself, because other people, so I started on our home's journey to less or simplifying probably 2 years ago, and we just went down the road of simplifying my husband's closet, because it takes time mentally to like be on that level and be ready for that. So if you're going down this road, the first thing you probably are going to want to do is, like I did, share with everyone that you know, like sisters and friends, how impactful this journey has been. And then they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I would love to do that. You should come over. And I would say, don't do it. It is a trap. Did you have,
Yes.
did you have any experiences with that? Because like, I think it's natural. We want to share and we want to help other people. But just like I experienced with my husband, some people are not, they'll say they're ready for that, but when it really comes down to it, they aren't. How do you manage relationships? Because now it's just this funny joke that Hannah's a minimalist or whatever, and
Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff, but how do you manage relationships with people after going through this experience?
I love that question. Great question, because I literally just did an episode about my biggest regrets when starting the minimalist journey. And one of my regrets was telling everybody. It was telling everybody, getting all excited. I was jumping on the bandwagon. I was gung ho. And that is one of my biggest regrets to this day, because first, it painted a huge target on my back.
Yep.
And as a new mom, you don't need any more targets painted on your back, because you have enough stress and enough comparison to deal with. And so for the right out of the gates, I think I made a huge mistake. And looking back, it's okay. I've learned a lot from it, and now I can speak clearly to it. But I think just staying really honest with yourself, and just keep it to yourself, and just do work inside of yourself. And you don't have to tell everybody about it. Even if you declutter your kitchen, like, just do it. Don't say anything about it, just do it. And you won't feel a ton of pressure to live this like minimalist lifestyle. Even if that's something you really want to do, great. But like, sometimes there's days when you just might not want to do that, and it just alleviates some of that pressure of, I declutter, I keep my home simple, but sometimes like we want to get things, and that's okay. And giving yourself that freedom, I think that's really big, as a mom, especially. And so with relationships, if you have told everybody like I did, I think the key for me, unfortunately, has just been time. Like, at first, I think they thought it was just this fad, and I'd get all the comments of kind of like what you said, oh, you're a minimalist now. You probably don't want any birthday presents. You probably don't want to come shopping with us.
Mm-hmm.
What do we even get your kids? Can we even get them anything? It was very kind of pretty hurtful comments. Like, I am not human. I don't like things. Well, that's of course wrong. I love things just like everyone does. But it's just reframing your mindset of, do I need this? Is it fit in the budget? Is this going to really help my household and enhance our lives? All of those questions we ask. And if it doesn't, it's hard, but you have to just say pass. And so those comments were super hurtful. But the one thing that really helped me was just consistency over time. Over the years, just living the same lifestyle, consuming less, not filling up our schedule with 1,000 events, living more simply, not buying my kids the latest and greatest toys. They're developing just fine. Just doing the consistent things day in and day out and not saying a bunch about it. I think that's been the biggest help with relationships. And just not to take it personally. I think that's a super hard thing to do because I definitely took it personally, but I think a lot of those comments reflect back at the person who's saying it. And I think maybe there's some insecurity there if they're constantly hounding you on, you being a minimalist or you not purchasing things. Well, maybe they're purchasing too much and it's just a insecurity they have. So just understand where that's coming from and try not to take it super personally. But
Yeah, I think you said so many important things there. And one of my favorites was the time, because I find, it's like motivation just fluctuates so much. So you're going to have, weeks or months where you're like, we're cluttering everything. And then, you'll burn out for a little while or whatever. But over time, I've found that slowly but surely over the last 2 years, things have just looked less clutter. And that's what I love about even the people that I was gung-ho and told all about this. They're seeing it now. It's not just me saying that I'm doing this and then going and doing it. They're coming over to my house and seeing that it's simplified room by room and we're doing those things. And I think, it's not just your stuff, it's also you and the way that you're presenting in the world, and people see and feel the calmness of your energy over time. But it does, I agree with you 100%, it takes time.
yeah, and a lot of times it's too painful for people. They don't want to deal with having to wait, and so they'll just revert back and be like, well, they're probably right. I probably can't do this, and I probably am weird, and so I'm just gonna forget about this whole thing. And if you are in that situation, I would just urge you not to. Just
Mm-hmm.
continue to save money and don't feel the need to keep up with the Joneses, and just really, set goals for yourself. I think that's a big thing too. If you, let's say you're trying to get out of debt, or you are trying to save up for a trip, or, to get your child something very special, like really have goals. And then it's more of a driving factor when you are trying to eliminate those like one-off purchases from Amazon, or grabbing, random things at Target, things that really just kind of add up without knowing they add up. That is, I guess, like one of the things that really helps me is knowing our goals as a family, knowing just how hard we've worked to get to this place, and knowing just how much calm that just purchasing less and having less in our homes and less in our schedules really does have on my personality, like as a mom. And so goal setting and understanding why, I guess I could go back to that, but like that's really, really big in the process. I think the actual act of decluttering itself, where you're just tossing items, that is the easiest, like most brainless last part almost, because so much work has to go in before that point, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And I think um I think you're absolutely right. Like that's a piece of the puzzle, but the bigger piece is the understanding of why you're doing it. And yeah, it all really comes back to that, because my why for decluttering or starting down this path was so that I had more time and presence with my family. And when that's the driver, that type of why doesn't just burn out tomorrow because we're done decluttering the kitchen. Like that fuels you to keep going on this path over time because it doesn't just happen in a spring cleaning weekend, right? It's an entire lifestyle shift.
Yeah, exactly. And if on the flip side to that, if you only have a spring cleaning weekend to start, I would just say start in the bathroom. It's the easiest place to get started. You can throw away so many things that they're like empty bottles, whatever. The bathroom is the easiest part to get the momentum going. If you don't have a lot of time and you don't have maybe the capacity in your mind to like really ask the hard questions and set the goals, just start in the easiest place, I think, and then maybe work from there.
Well, and that's such a great tip because you're absolutely right. Like, we're not just swimming in loads of time to do all of this. And it takes some sit down and some strategy. But, right, if you started with just one space, I think you would probably be amazed at I don't know. And I always go back to just the energy shift in a room, period, changes. Like when you reduce the clutter, and I can't even really speak to it as effectively as I want to, um, but just simplifying any room, the energy changes, and that might be enough fuel to like push you to do it more when you open up a little more time.
Totally. And it's that, like you were talking about energy. I mean, for me, going back to like the Pinterest houses and the picture perfect, playrooms or things of that nature, for me, I instantly notice, even if I walk into somebody's house that is from, let's say, like the 1930s, let's say it's super old and it's not the most updated. And if they live very simply, and I can just tell that everything, is very simple and minimal, it feels like the nicest home in the world to me. Just so peaceful, so calming, so inviting, so
Mhm.
homey. And it doesn't have to do with like the quality of the things they're buying or how updated their home is. It's just really like I guess an aura. And I've noticed that about myself when I walk in somewhere and it's just very simple. My grandmother has a house like that, and it's so every time we go in, it's like she is like minimalist to the T. She doesn't buy a lot of things. She lives with what she has. It's very simple living. And it's just a nice reminder, like, this doesn't require you to spend any money. It's very, and that shouldn't motivate you. You don't need to go like rebuy everything to make it look perfect. It really can be a simple process you can chip away at.
Yeah, and I found the the stuff that I did get rid of, I was amazed at how much of it I could kind of turn over, um, to fund some of those cool things that I wanted. And there was so much money laying around in boxes or being unused that I didn't even think about. When you talk about budget, um, that's kind of a cool benefit. It's like we got rid of a bunch of baby toys that we were never going to touch or use again. And that turned into, over a weekend, like $100 that was just laying there being unused. So there are some um, financial benefits. You're not going to make millions of dollars. Well, some people actually might. I didn't have that much amazing stuff laying around, but I was amazed at how much I actually could turn into a little bit of a profit to get some of those things that maybe I was lacking or missing when I ended up refunctionizing rooms.
Yeah, it is nice to make some money. I did make a little bit of money too when I was decluttering. I think too, on the other side of that, we value our things as more expensive than they probably are.
Mhm.
And so that's another reason why it's harder to get rid of things, is because you spent hard-earned money on it. And then when you go to get rid of it, you feel like it's a loss. And so if you start to put it on the market to sell it, whether it's on Facebook or wherever, you always value it much higher than maybe a stranger would. And I think trying to look at that object just in the view of just the person next door, don't attach any personal memories to it, and just like look at this item as it is. I think that also helps when you're trying to declutter, because I can't remember what the effect is. There's a couple different effects, but I think it's like it's not the Diderot effect, but it's opposite from that, where you just value your things as more expensive than they are. And so I loved just sometimes when it got too overwhelming for me and my things weren't selling, if I valued them too high, but I knew I needed to get rid of them, I would just put them on a buy nothing group and just bless somebody with it. And it's hard to do, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And you would be surprised at how many people would just go, like, I left it out on my porch. I remember I'll just say, one of my most crazy donations was I had this gold Michael Kors watch that I don't know why I bought it. I worked at the time in a job that I needed fancier things. And so I bought that. And as I've kind of become a mother, I do not need this watch. And I have a silver one that I love better. And so but trying to sell it on Poshmark or Marketplace, like people just don't apparently buy these things. And so I gifted that out, and it was like the craziest feeling, but somebody really was blessed by it. And I remember it was hard at first to let it go, but then I just realized, like, it's just sitting in my closet. This is not doing anyone any good.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a hard heart to heart I had to have with myself. But, sometimes, like, even if you can't sell something, like, just gift it out, give it to somebody. There's a ton of buy nothing groups. There's a ton of moms that need help. So if you have kids' toys that, you don't necessarily want to drop off, just donate them to churches or to families that need help, from shelters to, there's just so many ways you can really do a lot of work in your community with the things in your house.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I found in doing that, like, those payouts just felt so much better than even having cash in hand. It was like the ability to bless someone with something that means a lot to them, or could be, the difference between landing that next job or not because they got a pair of free dress pants, like that lives on in your heart for a long time.
Definitely it does, and it makes it worth it, like, when you go back and look. But don't get me wrong, like, I love making money too. Like, I would sell things on Facebook, and that's great too. Like, so you're like, oh, I didn't lose everything on this. So
Right.
they're both great. But yeah, it is, the whole thing is just so rewarding, honestly.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the more that you can involve the people within your home, the better. But I think one of the most important tips that you left us with was, one, start with the bathroom, as like an easy check off and get it done. I love that. And then two, start with yourself. Being the example is one of my favorite learning methods for anything. It's like, if you are living it, people will see you and mimic that, or just be inspired by that. And so, letting your truth speak for you, I think, is a really strong method of minimalism.
Yes, for sure. Even when it gets hard, because you will get the comments. So just knowing, like, it's not a personal thing. Keep going. You're doing great.
Yeah. And the long-term effects are what we're going after. Even the short term are amazing, but longer term, having lived this way for a while, it inspires you to do it even more, and to look at how you can implement that type of mindset in more ways than just your things, in more ways than just in just the physical realm. Like, mentally, how are we applying a minimalist approach? And I think it leads to more action in this way.
Yeah, it's a very fulfilling way to be. And if you can't do it perfectly, don't beat yourself up, because we're mothers, and most of us listening, I'm assuming. And so you have kids come with stuff. I think it's just a process, and just be kind to yourself in the process, because you have enough to deal with as moms, and we're not perfect, but just having a direction to go is really motivating, I think.
Yeah. And you get there over time. So if you can start with a bathroom today, and you can feel the energy shift there, maybe you start to see yourself implementing that more. But I think you're absolutely right. Don't add this to your 100 things to do list
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
It is not going to be a good experience if that's where you're starting from. I think, do what you can.
Exactly. And, if you do feel safe in telling somebody who you might think might want to, it might impact their lives too. I mean, obviously be very selective. I have a couple of friends that I feel safe doing that with. I think that's another fun way to do maybe, you know, toy swaps, or if you're wanting to, if your kids need new things, but you guys are kind of on the decluttering track and minimalizing, I think maybe doing toy swaps with friends or book swaps or doing certain fun little things that kind of keep you guys accountable can work.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say like isolate if you 100%, but just know, like, have your limits, I guess. But I've found that to be really helpful with friends that I know are trying to do the same thing, and maybe get a community of people around you. And again, this happens over time. Like even with us talking on a podcast, like it's amazing how many people you start to realize are kind of living the same way, and just being around those people really really does help as well, just to make you feel like you're not alone over time. But
Yeah. And there's a lot of great resources, a lot of people that you can follow as inspiration online. And your podcast is a great example of, even if you aren't finding those people in your network yet, there are resources out there.
yes, there are.
And you are one of them. So for all of my listeners, I'm going to go ahead and include all your details in the show notes, because you're, in my mind, the expert of someone who can help you get through the process of starting and start to encourage some of those shifts that come along with going down this path. So where do we find you?
Yeah, for sure. So my podcast is a big place to find me to start. It's the Simple Life Project podcast. And when you go there, you'll click my show notes. It'll take you to my blog, which is my name. It's laurennicolejones.com. And then if you happen to run into any of my blog posts, you'll notice I also do YouTube videos with most of my blog posts. So I have a YouTube channel that kind of brings my posts to life, because I really like that personal aspect of connecting with my audience. So I do a lot of cooking from scratch. I do a lot of, motherhood things and simple living topics. So it's all kind of interconnected, whether it be through listening, reading, and then video. And I made the decision 2 or 3 years ago to just get off of Instagram and Facebook completely. So I do not have either of those channels, just because I wanted to kind of simplify my life in those areas. And so those are the 3 ways that you can find me currently.
Awesome. I absolutely love that. So for anyone wanting to check Lauren out, we will include those on the show notes, but make sure that you check out her podcast and really just allow yourself to reach out and find people who are doing work like this. That's a really great first step, because it's not as simple as, oh, I'm going to declutter today and I'll be a minimalist tomorrow. And I always like to term myself not a white shirt minimalist. That's not what we're talking about. I think Lauren and I are similar in our approaches, that it's not like get rid of everything and only have one thing. That's not what we're talking about. It's about making life simpler. And for me, making sure that I have things that I really love and need. And that makes budgeting easier, and that makes life flow a little more simply for me. So yeah, reach out, find people. There are plenty of people living like this, and there are plenty of people on each ends of the spectrum. So don't feel like if you're just starting out, you have to be like those Pinterest perfect, we only have 2 t-shirts lifestyle. There are definitely people along all spectrums experiencing benefits of minimalism at all levels.
Amen.
Yeah, so find your people, find your crew, whatever minimalist and simplification of your life looks like. Thank you so much, Lauren, for being here today. Loved connecting with you. I'm sure you and I are going to connect further down the road. But thank you for blessing us with all of your knowledge on this topic. We definitely needed it here.
Thanks for having me.
And as always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? Change the world. Hey, thank you so much for listening. If you're still here, go ahead and check it's just me, out on all of our socials. I post every day, post with some inspirational, quotes and movements, definitely on Instagram and Facebook. You can find us at The Death of a Dream, also on LinkedIn, but I think that's just me. It's just Hannah Ness. But you can check out kind of some daily encouragement to go down, chase your dreams, and live your best life. You can always check back here in the show notes for anything that we might have talked about at some point in the show, anything that I'm creating at this given point. I won't necessarily talk about it on the podcast every single day, but you can always find what I'm working on in the show notes. So thank you so much for listening. All of you, whether you listen to one episode, 5 minutes or 5 seconds, make a difference to me. And I couldn't be here doing this work if no one listened at all. So every person over one is just a bonus. And I feel extremely grateful to be a part of your day.